In what seemed like a crime of passion, a respected pastor's life was cut short in a brutal act of violence. What led to this tragic event? Was it love, betrayal, or something even deeper? Pastor Marcus Bennett was more than a preacher. He was a guiding light in his community. A devoted husband, a trusted mentor, and a man whose faith inspired many. But beneath the surface of his picture-perfect life, a dangerous secret was brewing, one that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Latoya Dawson was no stranger to Pastor Bennett. Their paths had crossed years before, their connection undeniable. But what began as a passionate affair in the shadows would soon unravel into a nightmare of obsession, heartbreak, and bloodshed. What started as a secret relationship would soon unravel in a shocking crime that stunned an entire city. Marcus Bennett's journey to becoming a respected pastor was one of faith, dedication, and purpose. From a young age, he felt a calling, one that led him to the pulpit where his words resonated with thousands. His sermons at New Light Community Church in Atlanta, Georgia, were filled with conviction, hope, and wisdom. To his congregation, he was a man of unwavering faith. To his family, he was a loving husband and father. His wife, Denise Bennett, stood by his side, an image of grace and devotion. Together, they were admired, a couple embodying the very principles of love and commitment that Marcus preached every Sunday. Their life appeared flawless, a picture of faith and unity. But appearances can be deceiving. Latoya Dawson, a woman with ambitions of her own, a licensed mental health counselor, she had spent years helping others navigate emotional turmoil. Intelligent, confident, and charismatic, she had built a career rooted in understanding the human mind. But no amount of training could prepare her for the storm that would come when she crossed paths with Pastor Bennett. Their connection was undeniable. A chance meeting, casual conversations that turned personal, glances that lingered just a second too long. For Marcus, it was a temptation that threatened everything he had built. For Latoya, it was something more. A love she believed was real, a bond too strong to ignore. What started as stolen moments behind closed doors quickly became a dangerous game of secrecy. The pastor and the counselor, entangled in a love that could never see the light of day. And as the affair deepened, so did the stakes. But secrets have a way of surfacing. And when love turns into obsession, the results can be deadly. In the beginning, the affair between Pastor Marcus Bennett and Latoya Dawson was discreet, hidden beneath layers of secrecy and quiet rendezvous. What started as casual conversations soon became stolen moments behind closed doors. Late-night texts filled with longing, hushed phone calls when the world was asleep, and fleeting touches that spoke of a desire neither could resist. Marcus was playing a dangerous game, one that could cost him his reputation, his marriage, and his standing as a man of God. At first, the relationship thrived in the shadows. Meetings in dimly lit restaurants on the outskirts of town, weekend retreats under the guise of ministry work, and passionate exchanges in hotel rooms far from familiar eyes. But as the months passed, Latoya wanted more. She had fallen deeply, too deeply. What had begun as an affair of the body had become an entanglement of the heart. She was no longer satisfied with being a secret. Marcus, on the other hand, began to change. The weight of his double life was suffocating. At the pulpit, he preached about commitment, honesty, and faithfulness, but in his heart, he carried the burden of his betrayal. His once confident demeanor began to crack. He grew distant, distracted. Friends and colleagues noticed. His wife, Denise, noticed. Something was wrong. He wasn't the man he used to be. And then it all became too much. One evening, after months of wrestling with guilt, Marcus made a decision. He had to end the affair. It was the only way to salvage his marriage, to protect the life he had built. He met Latoya in private and told her the words she never wanted to hear. "This has to stop. I love my wife. I can't do this anymore." But Latoya didn't take it well. She refused to accept his decision. In her mind, they were meant to be together, and this wasn't just an affair. It was love, true love, the kind that wasn't supposed to end. Her messages became more desperate, her calls more frequent. She begged, pleaded, then demanded. She threatened to tell Denise. She threatened to ruin him. And then the emotional breakdowns began. crying fits, erratic behavior, whispers of self-harm. Marcus tried to ignore it, to distance himself, but Latoya wasn't going away. And on the night of April 3rd, everything came to a boiling point. It was late when Marcus heard the knock at his apartment door. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened it, his stomach dropped. Latoya was standing there. "We need to talk," she said, her voice calm, too calm. She had come under the pretense of closure, claiming she just needed to say goodbye, to have one last conversation for the sake of her own peace. Against his better judgment, Marcus let her in. Denise, his wife, was also home. The air in the room turned heavy, charged with unspoken words. Latoya locked eyes with Denise, and in that moment, the truth unraveled. The tension was unbearable. Denise demanded answers. Latoya, her emotions on edge, started to lash out. "You lied to me, Marcus? You said you loved me. You said we were going to be together." "Latoya, you need to leave," Marcus pleaded, his voice steady but tense. "No, you don't get to just throw me away." The argument escalated. Voices rose. Tears fell. And then, in a moment of pure devastation, Latoya reached into her purse. A glint of silver. A sudden movement. A gun. "You broke my heart," she whispered. And then the gunshots rang out. The sound of gunfire shattered the silence of the night. Inside the apartment, chaos unfolded in mere seconds. Pastor Marcus Bennett collapsed to the floor, blood pooling beneath him. His wife, Denise, clutched her side, her body racked with pain from the bullet that struck her. She gasped for breath, eyes wide with shock, as she looked at the woman who had just destroyed her life in an instant. Latoya Dawson stood motionless, her hand still gripping the gun. Her breathing was erratic, her eyes wild with emotion. The rage that had consumed her moments ago began to fade, replaced by something else: fear, regret, disbelief. The weight of what she had done was sinking in. A neighbor, hearing the shots and Denise's desperate cries, called 911. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance, blue and red lights flooding the dimly lit apartment complex. Officers rushed in, weapons drawn, finding Latoya standing over Marcus's lifeless body, the gun trembling in her hands. "Put the weapon down," an officer ordered. Latoya hesitated, her fingers tightening around the grip as if holding on to the moment before reality could crush her. Then finally she let the gun slip from her grasp, falling to the floor with a dull thud. Officers swarmed in, handcuffing her, as paramedics rushed to help Denise, who was still clinging to life. Sitting in the cold, sterile interrogation room, Latoya barely spoke at first. Her eyes were hollow, her face streaked with dried tears. When the detectives pressed her, she finally broke her silence. "He lied to me," she whispered. "He broke me." The detectives leaned in, urging her to explain. "He said he loved me. He said we had a future, and then he threw me away, like I was nothing." Her voice wavered between sorrow and fury, her emotions raw. She recounted the months of secrecy, the stolen moments, the whispered promises that had unraveled into betrayal. In her mind, she was not the villain. She was the victim. "I didn't plan to hurt him," she insisted. I needed him to see what he did to me. But when I saw them together, when I saw her, something inside me snapped. The officers remained silent as she continued. "I gave him everything. Everything." Despite her claims of not intending to kill Marcus, the evidence was damning. The gun, the threats, the text messages pleading with him not to leave. It all pointed to one conclusion. This was a crime fueled by obsession and rage. News of Pastor Marcus Bennett's death sent shockwaves through Atlanta. The congregation at New Light Community Church was in disbelief. The man they had admired, the spiritual leader who had guided them for years, was gone, taken in an act of senseless violence. Church members gathered outside the sanctuary, lighting candles in his memory. The pulpit where he once stood remained empty, a chilling reminder of the void left behind. Pastor Bennett was a man of faith, a man of wisdom, one member said through tears. "I can't believe he's gone." Another shook their head, still grappling with the truth. "We all thought he was untouchable, that he was a man of God. But he was just a man, like the rest of us." Denise, recovering in the hospital, refused to speak publicly for weeks. Her grief was immeasurable. The man she had built a life with, the father of her children, had been taken from her in the most brutal way possible. And worse still, He had secrets she never saw coming. The trial of Latoya Dawson became one of the most talked about cases in recent history. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, church members, and members of the public all wanting to hear the details of what had truly happened that night. Latoya sat at the defendant's table, her face pale and gaunt. The confident, professional woman she once was had vanished. In her place was someone unrecognizable, someone weighed down by the consequences of her actions. The prosecution painted a picture of premeditation. They argued that Latoya knew exactly what she was doing when she brought the gun that night. They showed text messages, recorded phone calls, and even statements from friends who had seen her obsession with Marcus spiral out of control. This was not a moment of passion, the prosecutor stated. This was a calculated act of revenge. But Latoya's defense team tried to shift the narrative, portraying her as a woman who had been manipulated, deceived, and ultimately discarded. She was a woman in love, a woman who was promised something that was ripped away from her. Her lawyer argued, she is not a monster, she is a woman who snapped under emotional distress. But nothing was more powerful than the testimony of Denise Bennett. Taking the stand, her voice steady yet full of pain, she recounted the moment her husband was ripped away from her. The way she looked into Latoya's eyes and saw nothing but fury. The moment she realized she was about to die too. She looked at me like I was the enemy, Denise said, her voice trembling. But I wasn't the one who lied to her. I wasn't the one who made her promises. I was just his wife. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before delivering their verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Latoya Dawson, guilty of first-degree murder and attempted murder. The judge wasted no time. Latoya Dawson, you are hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom fell silent. Latoya did not cry. She did not plead. She simply nodded, as if she had already made peace with the inevitable. With Latoya behind bars and Marcus Bennett buried, the story ended, but the scars remained. Denise was left to rebuild her life, forever haunted by the betrayal and the tragedy that followed. The church struggled to heal, its once beloved pastor now a symbol of both inspiration and human weakness. We put people on pedestals, one church member said, but they're just people, and sometimes people make choices that lead to terrible consequences. For Latoya Dawson, what started as love became an obsession, and in one tragic moment she lost everything. Her freedom, her future, and the man she thought she couldn't live without. In the end, love turned to rage and heartbreak turned to bloodshed. A moment of anger changed lives forever. The case of Pastor Marcus Bennett was more than just a crime story. It was a cautionary tale, a tragic reminder of how love, secrets, and betrayal can unravel into devastation. At its core, this was a story about choices. The choice to engage in an affair. The choice to keep secrets. The choice to let emotions spiral into something uncontrollable. And finally, the choice that ended a life and destroyed so many others. Infidelity is often romanticized in movies and novels, a thrilling forbidden passion. But in reality, affairs rarely end without consequences. Pastor Bennett may have believed he could balance his double life, that he could love his wife while keeping another woman in the shadows. But the weight of deception always grows heavier, until eventually it collapses. For Denise Bennett, the truth came at an unimaginable cost. She didn't just lose her husband, she lost the foundation of her marriage, her sense of trust, and the future she had envisioned with the man she loved. And for Latoya Dawson, what began as passion became an obsession, and obsession became destruction. In her desperate need to hold on, she lost everything, her freedom, her career, and the life she once knew. When emotions are left unchecked, they can consume a person. What starts as love can mutate into something far more dangerous. Latoya Dawson didn't wake up that morning planning to commit murder, but the combination of heartbreak, betrayal, and rage clouded her judgment. In the heat of the moment, her love turned into something unrecognizable, something deadly. This case serves as a stark reminder that emotional instability, when left untreated, can lead to devastating consequences. No one should ever feel that their entire existence depends on another person. When love turns into obsession, when desperation overrides reason, the results can be catastrophic. In the end, love, betrayal, and heartbreak led to a devastating loss. A moment of anger changed lives forever. Marcus Bennett is gone. His congregation is left to grieve. His wife is left to pick up the pieces. And Latoya Dawson will spend the rest of her life behind bars, haunted by the crime she cannot undo. If you or someone you know is struggling with emotional distress or in a toxic relationship, seek help before it's too late. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories. Stay safe, and remember, sometimes the most dangerous thing in the world is a broken heart.